Hello, everyone out in Facebook land. Oh, my hair's a mess. Um, everyone out in Facebook land, I'm glad you're here to join us tonight. And this is our guest artist for this evening is Pat Lentine. Hello, Pat Lentine. How you doing
Hello, hello.
tonight?
Hello, everyone.
So we're here, and she's gonna show us what we're doing. Hold on a second. And uh, talk about this little cute little guy and the ornament and how in colored pencil, right?
Right, right.
Right. So, if you, again, thank you for being here for these Watch, Learn, and Creates, and we really do appreciate you here. If you have any questions while you're watching, you can go ahead and you could put them in the chat, and I will relay them for you. If you're watching on the replay, thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this. And you too can ask questions, and anyone after the live is over can ask questions, and you can go put them in the chat, but put an @ sign in Pat's name so she's made notification that there's a question for her to answer, and we'll answer you. If you're going to be penciling with her tonight, please let us know, and we would love to see it. So please post it afterwards that you have done it to let us know that it's been done. And so I'm just going to say, because we're running late, I'm going to say, Pat, I'm going to put it on your project, and you can go right to it. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
There you go.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm glad that you're here. This is a cute little piece that you can I happen to have this mat with the oval opening that worked really well because it had a red insert, but it also fits into, and I thought I had it here and I don't. It also fits into a 8x10 mat. Oh, I had one here to show you in a brown, but I don't know what happened to it. But here's a white one. So it does fit in an 8x10 insert as well. So he's just a cute little fun thing to do. You could do them smaller and turn them into an ornament. I did him on mat board, and I really like working on mat board. It is a fun surface to work on. Some of my very early projects were on mat board, and I really enjoyed it. It's a nice surface to work on with colored pencil. The first thing that I did was color in the eyes, the mouth, and I kind of outlined the nose a little bit. And I also lined the little thing here for the ornament. I did some of that ahead because it's just easier than to try to get it with my shaky hands on camera. But anyway, you can put in the eyes, the nose, and the mouth a little bit. Then I took 20%. That was with 70% gray, cool gray. All of these are cool gray. Then I took the 20% and I did the shading on the fur. And in the PDF, I'm going to pull this over where I can see it better. It shows where to do that. So some of these areas I'm just going to wash in with a little bit of shading. Some of it I'll pull some hairs, and whenever you do hairs on an animal or a beard or whatever, you're going to do a pull and lift. The pull and lift will help you to get a point. Get another pencil here. So if you pull and lift, you get a point. So whenever you're pulling hair, you always want to pull and lift. Sometimes I kind of start up in the air and come down. I call this my airplane stroke. I start up, I land and take off. And that way you get a point on both sides. And I realized that I skipped a step here, so I'm going to go back. The first step that I did after putting in the eyes and the nose is I put in these ears, because these ears are a little bit darker. Let me Cindy, take off the spotlight for a minute so I can control the
Okay.
I
There
can't
you go.
control the give me a second. There we go. Okay, now I should be able to control it. You can put it back.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, so after putting the eyes, nose, and mouth in, I pulled in the ears, and I'm using that pull and lift stroke. And I did this with the 70%. And they have, if you think about it, when you're doing this, little S strokes, they can be curved, but little S strokes work well. And I think the pattern, I didn't get it up, the line drawing, I didn't get it quite up high enough here. So you might want to add a few hairs up on the top there to make it a little bit more even. So I just want to get those in. And then while I'm still got this in my hand, I'm going this 70%. I'm going to fill in the nose, the nostril holes. I'm going to pull the center line down, because usually we can see that center line in the nose. And the highlight area on the nose is, this is the front of the nose. So this is shaded because this comes down and doesn't catch the light. This is the top of the nose, and it catches the light a little bit more. So I'm going to go around where the light area would be. And I'm using very light pressure, especially in the beginning. Sometimes when I do a project the second time, I end up with heavier pressure because I know where I'm going. But when you're doing a project for the first time, especially, you'll want to use very light pressure. And then you can add another layer later. And I might pull a few little hairs here from the nose. Tiny little pull and lift strokes. Okay, so I got the 70% in. Let's widen the mouth just a little bit. And I'm doing an up and down stroke here because the hair comes over the mouth a bit.
And Pat, are you, Paula is asking if you're doing this from a photo of a dog.
If I'm doing what?
If you're doing this from a photo of a dog, like you have
Yes.
you have a dog's photo that you're doing this from?
Yes.
Did you show it to us at the beginning? I missed it.
No, I don't have it handy, so I don't, yeah.
Okay, no problem.
So, okay, so then let's go back to the 70% and pull these hairs around. And you have to watch the direction of that a dog's hair would be laying. And they kind of grow up and over here, and they go straight up right here. So you have to watch your direction. And I did it with the 70 or the 20% because it's safer. If you can see where you're going, and you can make corrections if you need to. But I'm just looking at right now, I'm looking at photo number 1 and trying to put the shadows in where I see them. And as I did this, as you can see, I took photos. So it doesn't mean that you're stuck to exactly what I did here. You can change yours a little bit if you want to. But there is, this kind of comes up here. So there's a shadow right in front of the eye there. So I do want to, you can use a little washy stroke there to get that shadow in. Doesn't look like I put much of a shadow over here, but there is a shadow right here. So wherever you see definite shadows, you can do a little washy stroke. But basically, I started out with the pull and lift. Okay, so then there's a shadow behind this ribbon. And it's funny right now, and I thought when I first did it, I thought I had the ornament crooked. Looks like it's not round, but once you get the color on and everything, it does look round again. Because I put a, and you can do that, I put a template up next to it to make sure it was round. Okay, so I'm just going to shade where the ornament lays on top of the coat here, and I'm just kind of doing a little washy shadow. When you do this, you want to make sure you lighten your pressure as you come out away from the ornament so that it fades out. Okay, then there's we want to separate this leg here. So I'm going to put a little bit of a washy shadow here to separate this leg. The coat lays over, and if you look at photo number 1, you can see this. By the way, my the pattern packet is available on my website, and that's what I'm referring to, the PDF. So if you look at the PDF, that's where you'll see where I shaded. So I'm separating this leg right now from the body. And you can see that. And as I said, this part down here is darker because this lays over the top of it. Now I want to separate this leg and come down on both sides. And this is, as I said, just a little washy stroke. There's a little bit of a shadow above this foot here. And if you don't happen to have it, this is what I'm talking about. This is the photograph in the PDF. And you can see there, it shows where the shadows need to be. So I'm just checking to make sure that I have them all. And they're not, I don't know if you noticed, but they're not quite as dark as they are on the screen. If you have the screen, this color is I made it darker on the screen so that you could see it better. There are some shadows in here for the toes. Okay, so that's the 20%. Well, and then after I did that, I pulled some strokes here and there. So I did then on these pattern lines. And the one nice thing about this is the transfer lines, if they don't get covered up, it's not a big deal because they just look like part of the fur. But I did pull some fur lines. Sharpen my pencil. So if you look and see where you need some more fur lines, you can do that with this color. And then I took white and I placed, we're going to do the ornament next. And I took white and I placed a white highlight in the ornament in the upper right up here. Now you won't be able to see this because it won't show up on this mat board. This mat board is an off-white. I'm putting it in and I'm softening all the edges around so that the next color will blend into it. There's a little bit of there's highlights on the bow, and you'd have to look at the finished piece to see where these highlights are. I'm just going to put them where I think they are, so hopefully I get them in the right spot. But this is to save the light areas. And again, I know you can't see them. You have to look at the finished piece to see where they belong. Okay, so then I took crimson red. Let me find my crimson. And I shaded the ornament. Okay, so it's shaded all the way around here along the outside edge, because that's a turning edge and it turns back. So usually the way I do it is I put it in where it belongs. And then there's a little white hanger thing there, so you want to make sure you don't go into that. So I put it where it belongs, and then I'm going to soften the edges. Now in the photograph, for some reason, I took the photograph before I softened the edges. So, and that's noted in the instructions. You want to have all these edges soft here. You don't want a hard edge. And I generally, as I said, I put them in, as you could see, going around the edge, and then I do little circles, little ovals to kind of soften them in. And I'm not going to worry about that, the white. I mean, I'm going to stay out of it somewhat, but I'm not going to worry about it. Hopefully it'll come back. If the whites don't come back, there is a way to bring them back at the end. So then I'm going to shade the ribbon here. Here's where the bow turns around, and there's a little bit of a shadow right here. Always try to keep the edges soft and very light pressure. And I may or may not be doing this exactly like the sample, but you get the idea. Okay, so we get the crimson shadows in, keeping that edge soft. Then I took scarlet red, and doing this project and another project that I was doing, I realized I am low on pencils, and I had to order some pencils, and they have not arrived yet. I'm low on white and my scarlet red. I'm may have to substitute Scarlet Lake because, and Scarlet Red is just a little bit richer than Scarlet Lake. Scarlet Lake is a little bit cooler, and the Scarlet Red's a little bit warmer, so I like that one. So then you just wash it in and you keep, actually, I might have stayed out of the white a little bit. No, I went into the white, but it does, just lightly into the white there.
So Lisa's saying he's already so cute, and Janet says it's okay. Two dogs are ever identical either.
Yeah, exactly. I can never make anything look exactly like the first one. And I always say, years ago, I realized I would paint a picture. And this was actually when I was doing acrylic. And I would paint a picture and it was like, oh, I wish I'd have done this different, or I wish I'd have done that different. So then the second time, and then I would teach it. So I would paint it a second time. And sometimes I teach it 2 or 3 times and I paint it several times. And each time I tried to correct what I had wished I had done the first time. And when all was said and done, I'd lay all the samples out and I always ended up liking my first one the best. So even with its imperfections, I like the first one better. Okay, so you wash it all in, and then you take white and you brighten those highlight areas. So like I said, sometimes with the white underneath, it'll come back. Now, if I didn't have white underneath there, I would not be able to get this as light as it is right now. And this is where I put it the first time, and I'm using pressure at this point. And I'm blending it in. So I'm kind of looking where the highlights are. And just putting some lights on that area. Now, I don't think, let's see, I don't think it's in the instructions. I might have missed it, but this is the little silver top to the ornament. So you can put white in there as well. And then I took pale vermilion. And of course, my pale vermilion just broke, so I have to sharpen it. And I put it over the white area. And this is a little bit of an orange color. And I'm not very sharp here, so it's not working as well as it should, but and into the crimson. I'm not going all the way into the crimson, but I am blending it in to soften the edges. Okay, then I'm going to take raspberry. Let me find my raspberry. Oh, hold all my pencils. And it's not here. Okay, I used raspberry, but for this, because I can find it quicker, I'm going to use Tuscan Red. I used to use Tuscan Red a lot. I don't know why my raspberry isn't here. Maybe this is it. Nope. Okay. I used to use Tuscan Red a lot. I love Tuscan Red. I probably like it better than raspberry. The difference is the Tuscan Red is not light fast. So I stopped using Tuscan Red. That's why I switched to raspberry. But right now I'd have to go dig out my raspberry because I, for some reason, put it away. So I'm just going to use the Tuscan red. So we shade this ornament with the Tuscan red softly, let it fade into the light areas. You want soft edges. Except where you want a hard edge, which is right here to separate the ribbon from the ornament. There you want a hard edge. And restate the shadows here with soft edges if you can. And then I took Scarlet Lake or Scarlet Red and I washed over everything again. And you'll find with, if you want something smooth and you put a lot of layers on it and you learn eventually which layers, like the white, I added a little bit more pressure. With this one, I'm not really doing any pressure. If you want more coverage, I always say, if you want more coverage, stay in the area a little longer. In other words, if I want more coverage right here, I'm just going to stay in this area and put a few more layers. I'm not going to press to get that coverage. I'm just going to add more layers. So I go over the whole thing again with the Scarlet Red. This is the medium value. And everybody has a different pressure to their hand. Some people use lighter pressure, some people use heavier pressure. As I said, when I design a piece, it seems like I use a lot lighter pressure than when I go at it the second time, because the second time I kind of know where I'm going and the first time I don't. And when you're doing a piece, you might find that too, that when you first start a piece, you don't know what to expect. So you use lighter pressure. And then as you know what you're doing, you use heavier pressure. But as I said, everybody has a different pressure. So that depends on how many layers you have to do. Some people have to do more layers than others. Then I took black, and this you use very light pressure. With black, it's such a strong color that I'm barely touching the paper. And in the photograph, in the design or the PDF, it looks a lot darker than it should be. So you don't want it as dark as you see it in the photograph. But this is the darkest dark. Now I would put a little bit of that in. Again, light pressure, but you also want soft edges. You want to keep them soft. And this technique here is good for, any clothing, anything that's smooth. For instance, this you want shiny, and this you want kind of shiny too, because it's kind of satiny. But if you were doing, for instance, a Santa suit, this would be the same technique you would use on a Santa suit. So after I got the black in, I went back to the raspberry and I put this over the black. So I'm just little, again, no pressure, just little circles covering the black a little bit. Soft edges. And then I usually end up washing the whole thing again with Scarlet Lake. Excuse me, Scarlet Red. Stay out of the white, the lightest area. You know, don't go into that too much, but you want to go into, you don't want to leave a circle where you can see it either. So you want to kind of blend up into it. Okay, then I took, and I don't, let's see, I'm looking at the instructions. I don't know if it's coming up later or not, but I might have missed it in the instructions. There is some line work in this little ornament thing here. I just put a couple of lines going up. And separated a little bit with, made sure it was separated here. Okay, then I took a brush, and I'm a big fan of brushes, and I like a stiff bristle brush. It's like a fabric brush is what it's like, and it's flat. I like flat rather. You can use the filberts and they work, but I prefer the flat. And I have this is an awfully big one here, but I brushed this red. Now, usually before I brush, I will clean my brush off, make sure my brush is fairly clean. You can wash these brushes, but I have enough brushes myself that I have different colors. So this is my red brush. I have several red brushes. So I just keep it red and I don't wash them, but you can wash them. But I usually try to check to make sure it's red before I use it. But I don't know if you can see how smooth that makes it. See how that really, really works. If you do wash these brushes, you want to let them dry overnight. That's why I try to have several, all in different colors. So I would continue. I'm not going to take a lot of time to do this right now, but I would continue to brush that like over at this edge here till I see that it's good. The one thing you can do is you can use the colorless blender, and I do use colorless blenders sometimes. And especially I will use them like in an area here where I don't want to brush and get it into the fur. So I'll use it right here. And I might use it where it's close to something that I don't want the brush to go out onto. The reason I like the brush over the colorless blender is because the brush doesn't add wax. And if I wanted to add more layers onto this, I could add more layers easier with using the brush than I could with the colorless blender. And as I said, you may need to use more layers than I did. If you're light-handed, really light-handed, you may need to use more layers, but you could work that and make sure all the edges are nice and neat and cleaned up. Okay, let's go back to the fur. And this time I'm going to use 50%. And let's see, what does it say? Okay, I'm going to continue to build the fur, and I'll show you on here. I'm going to continue to build the fur. We already put these shadows in, but it's not very dark. So with the 50%, I'm going to continue to put more shadows in. I recommend you start with the eyes and kind of work your way out so that you know, because it can get a little bit confusing until you get some of these shadows in, but you can see where they are here. And if you look at the finished photograph, you can see that as well. So I'm just going to darken some of these shadows. And like I say, if you start with the eyes and work your way out, I did it first with the 20%, partly to make sure to see where I got it and get it in the right place. And I'll do that a lot, putting things in so that I get them in the right place. I'm going to flip my photo. And it's best to go slow. You can always add. It's harder to take away than it is to add. You can erase. There's all different kinds of erasers. There's a shadow under the nose here. One of the, I use, for erasers, I use a kneaded eraser or sticky stuff, which is, to me, is it's a putty. It's the what you put on what you use on the back of pictures to make them stay in one spot. And I like that better than a kneaded eraser, but I do use kneaded erasers as well. And then, of course, there's the Tombow eraser, which is one I use the most.
So that that sticky stuff, it's poster putty.
Yeah, yes.
Poster putty.
The reason I like the poster putty better than the kneaded eraser is because it doesn't dry out. I have so many kneaded erasers that dry out, and that stays sticky longer. And there's different brands. I think it's the Super Glue brand that's yellow, and that's my favorite. I either buy the yellow or the white. They have a blue one, and I don't know what company that is, but the blue one, anyway, the one I bought was too sticky. It was gooey. But the yellow, and I believe it's super glue, that one was the one I liked the best. Otherwise, the white. So I'm going to intensify these shadows. And I got to look at my notes to make sure I'm doing this right. Okay. Got to sharpen. It's always good. And when I'm demonstrating, I don't sharpen probably as often as I should. But it's good to keep your pencils nice and sharp. Now he has toes here, and I'm putting them in. I may or may not be getting them in exactly the right place. So, you know, when you're doing it, pay attention to your pattern. the front of these paws, oh, I'm sorry, I'm off camera. The front of these paws are facing down, you know, you're looking at them from the front. So you want to put a little bit of shadow right here because the light hits the top and the light's not hitting down here. So first I put in the toes, and like I say, I may or may not be putting these in exactly the right place, but and then I shade to make them look like they're facing down. And then, as I said, this is a little bit darker right here because this part of the fur is laying over it. And then this leg comes up. Like this. And I think I've got most of the shadows in now. And then once I do that, then I start pulling fur. That pull and lift stroke. The directions I see already, and they kind of split in the middle here. Maybe pull a little bit more here. And you can make them as shaggy or as not shaggy as you want. You can add fur strokes to the outside edges. If I need some up here. Might wash in the ears just a little bit. Make sure they look darker. Or I could pull more strokes. It's just quicker to wash them in. And look at your piece to see that you've got the shadows where you want them. Maybe a little bit more on the under the mouth here, a little bit darker. Okay, then I took the Cool Get Gray 50% and excuse me, the 20%. And I went over some of these just to blend them in. Ooh, what happened? There we go. Just to blend them in a little bit. I went over the dark areas if they needed it. Actually, I don't think these need it so much. Maybe the first time I did, but if you need to, you can soften some of these dark areas with the 20%. If they got a little strong, or if you need to bring the shadow out a little bit here, so it's not a definite edge. Okay, then I worked on the, looking to see how I'm doing. I worked on the eyes, nose, and mouth. And the ears. I put some black in the ears. Think of S strokes and think of strokes. We washed in now if you do, and I generally, when I'm using black, I'm using very little pressure. And you can adjust as you see fit. But at this point, I can use a little bit of pressure because I'm putting it over the 70%. And in order for it to show up, I'm using a little bit of pressure. Don't generally use pressure with black. Let's pull this ear down to, this ear is a little longer, so I'm going to make this ear match. Okay, then the eyes, make sure you have good dark black eyes. I'm going to sharpen my pencil. I'm going to work on the, well, first of all, I'm going to darken the mouth. And I'm pulling strokes, pulling and lifting strokes up and down because I want it to look like that fur is hanging over. And there is a little bit more of a straight line here. I mean, it's thinner over here and it gets a little bit thicker right underneath. There is this ornament hanger right here that's coming from his mouth. So that's what he's holding on to. You can take that and outline both edges and put a little bit of white right in the middle. So it looks like the hanger. And any place that you want more white, like at the end, when I get done and I brighten some of these areas with white, you might want, if I don't notice it, or if you need it more, you can brighten that later with some white. Okay, then I'm going to take the black and I'm going to darken my nose. I think we put it in first with the cool gray. So hopefully we've got it in the right place. And I'm going to define it with black. And I'm going to wash again the front of this nose. I filled in the nostril holes with some pressure. And then I'm washing the front of this nose because it's downward facing. And the top of the nose is picking up the light. But I need to bring a little bit of this up here. And then maybe shade along the outside edges. And then I think did we put white there? I don't remember. If we didn't put white there, we need to put a little bit of white there. And then just gently, barely touching the paper, wash over it. And then just darken anything that needs to be darkened. And then we can take our white and go back and just lighten it if we need to. Okay, so that's the eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. Okay, then I did the background. And I think the background right now says, in the instructions says 30%. I think I've been using 20%, and 20% it will work. So okay, so you want to make sure this is straight across. So I'm gonna pull, and on my photo, I see that it comes about there, and then I want it to come straight across. And I'm using the side of the pencil, and I'm going to pull this background up. And when I first did it, I think I stopped right about here, but then at the end, I decided to go all the way up. So I'll go all the way up right now. At first, I didn't think I would, but I did. And I tried to make it a little bit darker at the bottom and let it fade up. And you have to take your time to get next to the dog. so that you don't, go into the fur too much, but you don't want to look like you have a halo around him either. So I, at this point, won't be too careful with it, but you get the idea. Then I put a shadow under the dog, okay? I put a shadow and as you're pulling his fur, you want to think, I thought the light was coming from this side here, and that's where the shadow is for him. So I tried to keep him lighter on this side of his fur as well. So you have to come here and let it fade off. This might even be out of the matte area, but you want it to be soft on this edge, and it's a little bit harder there. There's a little bit of a shadow under him here, which we'll have to darken because right now it just blends into the fur. And then there's a space, and then you want him grounded here. So that's the shadow underneath. And I started with the 30 or 20 or 30%, and then I went to the 50%. Here it is. And I darkened a little bit down here, again, letting it fade up. Side of the pencil. And when I did this the first time, I was very tentative because I wasn't sure what I wanted. I'm being a little less tentative this time. And I wanted it darker under here to look like a shadow. So his fur was, darker than the fur. Okay. So that's the shadow. And if you need to repeat those steps, as I said, I think I was I was not as tentative this time. So I think I did it darker than I did in the beginning. And I need to find a brush to brush that. I thought I had one out here, but oh, here it is. Okay. So this is a different brush. This is, it's this same type of bristle flat edge. This is a White Dove 455. I don't know if they're still available on the Dove website, but I like these brushes as well. And I think they're fabric brushes. But I did brush this background. And I don't know if it's in the instructions or not, because I haven't got that far, but you can repeat this and do this as many times as you need, depending on how you want it, how dark you want it, or how blended you want it. I think I might have done it again later in the instructions. But again, I think I was not as tentative this time as I was in the beginning. I don't know if you can see how that smooths it out quite a bit. So it's actually, that's magnified quite a bit. So it looks a little better than. I think I ended up putting more color in here too. Okay, so you brush it. Then the fur, and because this was somewhat dark, and I don't like the way this is right here, I'd have to smooth that out. And one way to smooth it out, I'll show you in case it happens to you. One way you could do to smooth that out is, instead of making it darker, you could take your 20% and go back with it that way and smooth it out. Or you could erase it. If it didn't get light enough, you could erase it. And I probably would lift it with some putty or with my eraser to, because that's too dark. I like this side better. And I guess this is a good learning. So let me show you. This is the putty. I keep it in a little container. It's not the container it came in, so I won't show you. But this is the yellow putty I was talking about. And I've had this a long time, and I really like this particular brand. But I could just tap and lift. And hopefully that would come up. Sometimes after brushing, it's not as easy to get up. That's still going to be an issue. So this time I would go to my trusty regular eraser. And soften it that way. And then I'd go back over it with the 20%. So anything can be adjusted or fixed. Just have to play with it sometimes. So that's how you would take care of that. Okay. I brought the brush out because, I'm going to show you how I brush the fur. So I would take this brush and kind of clean it, make sure it's not too dark, and it's not. And then I would brush the shadows on the fur. So all of these areas here that I would want a little bit softer. Anywhere I put shadows. I don't know if you can see how nice that blends. But it's doing a nice job of blending. Now, if the brush is too big, I use the corner. I'm reading my instructions to make sure I've got it all. Okay, so we can brush the ears. We still want to see the hair, but it fills it in a little bit. If the shadows under his feet need brushing, brush those. And you can brush this shadow slightly into his paws. Okay. So that's that part. Now the eyes, I'm going to do the eyes. Let me find my pencil, my light umber. Okay, we want to we have an eye here. I'm going to do a bigger one here, and it's black. So from about 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I'm going to pull a light umber, fairly thick line. And this is the light part, kind of the highlight in the eye. So that's what I'm going to do first. So from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I'm going to pull a thick line, fairly thick line. I thought this was, because the eyes are so small, I thought this was easier to do it this way than to try to put the brown onto the black. I had to darken that eye. So I know you can't see that very well on here. That's why I'm doing a larger eye. Okay. Then I'm going to pull a line along the outside of the light umber. So I'm going to bring this black along the outside. Trying to keep them round. There's going to be hair on top of them, so it's not a deal breaker, but that's what I'm aiming for. And once you get that black in, you can see the light umber better. Now on the right side, I'm going to leave a little bit of a white area. Let's see if we can see it on here. So because this is a highlight side, I'm going to pull, but I'm going to try to leave a little bit of white right in here. And you can see that white a little bit. And if you lose it, you can put it back in at the end. Okay, then there's a white highlight of a white sparkle dot in here, and we'll put that back in at the end too, because I do that with acrylic. When something is this little, it's really hard to do it with pencil to keep that highlight in. So now what I did was check all my values. I just looked at the original, and I looked to see if I needed a value check. And I might add some shadow down in here on this one, but you have to kind of look at your piece and decide. And I might add a little bit of shadow on this side of the leg, a little bit. And maybe because the light wouldn't be hitting it here. And I'm using the 50%. So at this point, you just look at the original and you try to see if you need any adjustment in your values. As I'm looking at it on the screen, I see it's very white here and it's very white here. So I might just kind of lightly bring a hair in there so it's not so white. I also see that it's pretty white in here, and that would be darker, so I might put a shadow right here. So you just look at your original and check your values and see if you need to add anything or lift anything if possible. He looks like he could use some hair over here. Let me find my, oh, I guess this will do. Looks like I need a little bit of volume over here. So I might put some more hair over here. You know, you just look at your individual piece. see what it needs. And then I took, I don't know, I'm going to have to check the instructions. I pulled out 20% to use here. Let me look up at the top, see what I did say. Yeah, I did say 20% was the pencil to use. However, in the instructions, it says 30%. So you can use 20 or 30%. Okay. I placed it on I decided that this was too white. So I used the side of the pencil and I put some in the floor because I didn't like it being so white. And then you can reevaluate your floor and decide if it needs, or your background entirely, and you know, fix whatever needs to be fixed. And I always say it's a good idea to have your mat handy, because putting your mat on helps you decide what you need to fix. And if, as I'm looking at this with the mat, this looks like it's slanting downward. So I would have to fix that, because you want the wall to be level, of course. Now, if I were to use the oval mat, let me grab it. It might not even be noticeable. Yeah, I would still need to fix that. So it's always good to have your mat handy to see, because it helps you to see what you need to be fixed, what needs to be fixed. Okay. Now I went to acrylic and my liner brush. Now there's a lot of ways. If you don't have acrylic, or if you don't want to use acrylic, I have used watercolor brushes for this. What I would do, wait, I'm getting my acrylic ready. When I use a watercolor brush, especially, you know, there's some, if sometimes you want to enter a project into a competition and they don't allow acrylic. So I would take a watercolor pencil, and I would take my liner brush and wet this and pull and get the, I have to take my picture away because it spatters. I could pull, you have to work it because it, you have to activate the pencil. But if you keep pulling this and pulling this, you eventually pick up some watercolor off of the pencil, and then you can use that to on your piece. But it's just, to me, a lot easier if I'm not going to enter it into competition, to use the acrylic. So I've got my liner brush and I've got a little bit of acrylic here. And let's see. First of all, you can soften any area that, or no. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I put a sparkle in each eye, okay? So you want them on the right side because the light's coming from the right. And I have found that you can do this, if you make a mistake, you can do it several times. So in other words, I'm going to put it in. If I make a mistake, I'll show you. So I'm putting a little sparkle there. That just brings him to life, I think. And I don't usually do that. I usually do a little sideways comma stroke. If you didn't like that and you did it wrong, you could take your black pen, wait till it dries, take your black pencil and color it in, and then try it again. You can do that several times, because believe me, I've done it before. I could put a little highlight on his nose if I wanted to. I could put some highlights here in this little holder, or this little, what is that called? Trim. I could put a highlight here. I could put a highlight here. I gotta pick up some more paint. I could put a highlight. Now that's quite dark, so I probably wouldn't leave it like that. However, if it did, okay, it's not, if it didn't come off, you could put the red pencil over it. So just a little bit of a highlight here and there. You know, you could put it wherever you wanted. Let's see what I said. Oh, I pulled some hairs too. I did the highlight on this ornament hanger. You could put a little bit of a highlight there because that's what's coming out of his mouth. I did use this to put some hairs over his eyes because it just looked more natural. I have to turn this around to do this side. So you can put a few hairs over his eyes. Did I do anything else? Oh, and by the ears, I put a few hairs over the ears too, into the ears. Because it made it look more natural that way. Now, once you do this though, and if you lost, you know, some of your lights, you could go ahead and stroke some hairs into the dog if you wanted to. I didn't do that, but you could. Okay. Then you want to make sure that it doesn't look like you put white acrylic paint on your piece. And I did this quite quick, so I didn't, I wasn't as careful as maybe I normally am. But I wanted to show you, you can, if it looks too bright, you just, hopefully that's dry. And you just color it over with the pencil. You don't want it to look like white acrylic paint. So you do color it over. The same with the hairs here. You would take your gray pencil, any place that looks like white acrylic paint, you would color in with your pencil that, like your 50% gray or your scarlet red. If there's some place on your dog that got too dark, you could take a white pencil and let's see, where could I show this? Say I didn't like it as dark over here. I can soften it with my white pencil. So any place it might have gotten too dark, you can soften with your white pencil. Then I always recommend you take a break and come back to it the next day with a fresh eye and reevaluate, because you'll see things that you didn't see the first time. And wonder where that brown mat went. You might see something that you didn't see the first time you did it. So that's what I would do. Take a break. I always say put it somewhere where you look at it occasionally and you might see something that you didn't notice the first time. So that's the Shaggy Dog. Do you have any questions? And as you can see, I spent more time. Okay, I'll show you. I spent more time on this one and it was a little bit darker value than I did on this one. So you can do that. They both look a little different, but yeah. So any questions?
No, there isn't any questions. They're loving him. He is so darn cute. But I definitely do notice, I'm noticing your shaded areas are a lot darker on the first one. So that's just
Right. It's just,
going back
yeah,
pencil, right?
just going back with your 50% gray and reshading. Yeah. And the ears too. I did a lot more color in the ears than I did.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see the ears, the eyes, the mouth area, and then the bottom where his belly meets the flooring,
Right.
paws and stuff.
Right. And it's just going back and putting more layers in.
Yeah.
Same thing, just more layers.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight. And again, if anyone has any questions on this demonstration, go right ahead and put an @ sign in front of Pat's name. Make sure the P in Pat is touching the @ sign, and then she'll be notified that there's questions for her, and she'll go back and she will answer them for you. But he is adorable. Of course, now you have a gray and white cat. I'm like, ah, cats,
Now you
dogs.
can see it.
Yeah,
Yeah. She's been dying to get up here the whole time.
yeah, yeah. Well, he loves to help you, right? So
Right, exactly.
everyone is loving it. They said, thank you so much. So sweet. So if any of you do buy the pattern packet from Pat, patlentine.com, I put it in the chat, and you do pencil this, please uh, post it so that we can check it out because I love to see your work and Pat does too. So please do that and don't hesitate to sign up for her upcoming classes she has. You don't have those readily to show them, right?
No, but where is the Santa? The Santa is done with the same technique. No, what is done with this? Yeah, is this the Santa technique? Oh, Cindy. Yeah, Cindy,
I
what's
don't
this
know.
for?
You should know.
Uh, yeah, that was Finley. That was yeah, I think this was the same. This was because I was showing the same techniques that I'm going to be using on the Santa
Aha.
coming.
So that's going to be in, I know I'm pulling it up. I'm so late. Um,
Yeah, I should have it right here, but I don't know where it is.
so
It's on Macbook.
I
That's
have
why it,
July 24th. That's the
okay. And
July
it's
24th.
on, Santa is on Matboard and it's the same techniques.
And I'll pull up the picture so they can see it because he is so handsome. Let me go over here and share. So there he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one.
He's done.
Go ahead. Were you going to say something, Pat?
No, he's done on Matboard with the same techniques. It's just the red is the same technique. It's just you'll learn flesh and you'll learn a little bit more on the fur and the beard. So,
And
but basically,
portraits are always a learning curve, and it doesn't matter how many you do, you know. So I love the
right. And Santas are so much fun because you don't have to, they can be craggy looking. You don't have to make them smooth.
I like the twinkle in his eye, especially, and the fur around his hat is really nice too. That's really cool. So please come and join Pat, and on that would be on July 24th, and we will see you again in a few weeks for another demonstration. And also, too, you can check out artfulwebinars.com and sign up for Pat's classes or any of the other ones that you find that you'd like to learn more about. And so, thank you so much, Pat, for sharing your talents with us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a great weekend.